All right, good morning. Welcome to the Ookla booth. Ookla is the global leader in network connectivity. Today we have George Jijiashvili, principal analyst from Omdia. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Excellent. So we've seen some amazing research done by you and your team. Could you tell us a little bit more about what you're seeing in the gaming industry?
Yeah, so gaming industry is huge, as you know, but unfortunately, the rest of the world tends to forget about that. And for example, we're forecasting that the consumer spend on games will be somewhere in the region of $250 billion in 2026. And so that's bigger than the consumer spend on video services like Netflix and music services combined.
That's incredible. Do you see that across all different device types? Is that mostly on traditional consoles? Is that on mobile devices? What are you seeing there?
Well, the beauty of gaming is that it's so varied and it's available on virtually any device with a screen, which is amazing.
Absolutely.
Before, you're right, it was very much kind of confined to consoles and PCs, but now thanks to smartphones, virtually anyone with a smartphone is potentially a gamer.
That's fantastic. Do you see similar trends of usage between the two platforms? I mean, the games are very different on mobile versus desktop versus console. Do you see any difference in how they're used?
That's right. So consoles and PCs tend to be long sessions playing, for example, Call of Duty or something like that. And whereas mobiles tends to be more like snacking experiences.
Sure.
And you kind of think of like a match 3 games, or you kind of think of increasingly more like console experiences are coming to mobile. So if we think of games like Genshin Impact, for example, or again, Call of Duty Mobile, these are kind of experiences that you would associate with consoles in the past, but now it's just really available across all platforms, including mobile. So anyone can experience this high-end gaming on any device that they already own.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's really great to hear, especially seeing the proliferation around the world. Now, traditionally the games on console devices, etc., they're much more expensive. They have a high cost to entry. Mobile is much cheaper. Does that mean that overall the mobile games are not making as much money? Is there the overall spend there?
It's actually on the contrary, because
Really?
if we delve into the market itself, if we dissect it, we will see that actually the spend on mobile games outweighs that of console and PC
Really?
combined. It is incredible, and that's before we even get into the revenues generated from advertising on mobile games. Then it increases it even further. So it's a huge opportunity.
Interesting. So, I mean, what we're hearing here is that there's major spend on mobile devices. We're getting a more console-like experience on mobile devices. What I'm hearing here is that it's becoming much more important for the networks backing that to be able to handle this next experience.
Exactly, and before in the past, gaming was very much a single-player experience. Very offline. Perhaps multiplayer would be very much a couch co-op kind of experience with your big brother or whatever. Whereas now, connectivity is at the heart of gaming. So any popular game that we look at in the top charts, they all have multiplayer elements, they've got social elements, and in many ways, if you look at what happened during the pandemic, people used gaming as a way to socialize.
That's right.
They were not using traditional social media websites.
Yeah.
They were just hanging out in places like Fortnite or Roblox or whatever, and just spending their time there and socializing there.
Yeah, I mean, it's they're able to create their own little world outside of their house. They're able to experience that with their friends, with their family, etc. That's something that we've been really focused on at Ookla. Traditionally, we've always been known, as you can see, for bandwidth. We're the speed test company. But speed, the definition of it is changing. So we really want to make sure that we're representing the consumer experience. And especially in the context of gaming and next generation experiences that are on the horizon, latency is a huge part of that. To be able to nail that console-like experience and to make it engaging so people aren't dropping out, stuttering, skipping. The way that a lot of these games work is that they use AI to predict in the future to guess what you or I are going to do as an action. And then based on the time it takes to actually receive what really happened, they'll correct it, they'll fix it. But if there's major deviations, if there's a long delay in that, players will see jumping, they'll see stuttering, bullets will miss, or different aspects like that just make the experience not very good. So that's something that we're focused on, is measuring all different types of latency. Historically we've measured unloaded latency, which is where the connection is idle. It's really your best case latency. But that's not always the case. Sometimes we're going to load up the connection. Sometimes you're streaming video, you're running Twitch, you're streaming to Twitch. And what we do for that is we actually are measuring the latency while we're loading up the connection. We actually saturate it up to its maximum, we push it hard, and we measure how long the latency is. Globally, we'll oftentimes see that latency go from unloaded around 35 to 55 milliseconds, all the way up to 1.6 seconds. That's 1,600 milliseconds. And that's a terrible experience. So I guess the question I have is then, looking forward to the future, where are you seeing in terms of new, markets expanding for gaming, for these next places? Networks are always looking for opportunities, carriers are always looking for opportunities. Do you see gaming as a way for them to differentiate themselves?
Definitely, and if you walk around the show floor here at MWC and visit some of the largest telco stands, one thing that you will see is cloud gaming. It's like a continuing theme across most of the large telcos here, be that Telefonica, Orange, China Mobile, and they clearly see cloud gaming as a great use case for 5G from their perspective, obviously, because they're looking for their use case that which really suits the next generation use cases, and cloud gaming is part of it. Now, yes, cloud gaming is still, it's still
early stages.
It's early stages. Yeah, very nascent market. But we are seeing a lot of development in this space, and a great thing is the whole kind of the premise of cloud gaming is to deliver those high-end console-grade AAA titles to people who just don't have the console. Either it's just not available to them in markets like India or Brazil, or people who perhaps just don't want to invest in hardware. They want to dip into the latest AAA games, but they don't necessarily want to make the hardware commitment to it. So this is kind of this is a really, really interesting area.
I mean, it seems like a smart move. I mean, you're talking about the overall spend and monetization of mobile gamers, that kind of casual gamer being higher.
Yeah.
Now they can start to maybe capture that within the AAA gaming segment as well. It's a really amazing one to hear, even just, the concept of bridging the digital divide. It sounds like cloud gaming could help bring these types of experiences that frankly would not be affordable previously, as long as they have the connectivity.
Exactly, and that's the key here. And we talk about markets where they tend to have very high smartphone penetration. They have smartphones available widely, but again, these kind of the specific game-specific hardware is not widely available, or is just prohibitively expensive.
Yeah.
But we're seeing really rapid rollouts of fast internet access, again, in emerging countries that we mentioned earlier. So what that means, that opens up an opportunity for telcos to really pave the way and kind of deliver these AAA games that people in those countries are yearning for, but they just have no physical access to them.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really fascinating point is, at least in the United States, a large portion of our infrastructure is still based upon DSL. It's not very performant, to put it that way. They may be connected, but they're not having the best experience. There are carriers in the United States, such as Verizon, or operators such as Xfinity, that are doing really interesting. They're kind of blurring the lines between traditional fixed and then also wireless. So they're investing in fixed wireless access. And what they're able to do is leverage their existing CapEx spend. They've built out their 5G networks, but now they're using FWA, fixed wireless access, to provide that bandwidth to the home, to be able to convert that previous DSL customer and see increased average revenue per user. So it's a really fascinating one to see. I'm hoping that gaming will be a major driver for pushing the industry forward and being innovative.
Yeah, definitely, and obviously moving to wireless access provides new challenges when it comes to things like latency and network stability, jitter, lag, all these things, right?
Absolutely.
And that's definitely been one of the conversations here at MWC. GSMA announced their open API initiative, obviously to kind of make it easier for service providers to kind of add extra layer of, utilize some extra layers of API to increase bandwidth where needed, and kind of is to enable services like cloud gaming. And again, if we walk down to the Ericsson stand, they're essentially demonstrating just that. So there's still, it's very much has to happen in tandem. So for cloud gaming to kind of really take off, we're going to need networks supporting it, enabling it, and of course we need games on these services that people actually want to play.
Absolutely. Well, one of my favorite things about gaming as a connectivity focused individual is, gaming solves a really complex engineering problem. You have this very distributed state. You have a view of the world, I have a view of the virtual world. Everyone around the globe, if we're competing together, has to have the same virtual, coherent world. This is a similar problem that is seen in many of the kind of heralded next generation 5G technologies. Autonomous vehicles, remote surgery, those types of aspects rely upon very consistent, very accurate, and very low latency. And this is something that I'm hoping that carriers use gaming, operators use gaming, and different service providers, say like AWS, GCP, Azure, et cetera, use gaming as the kind of toehold that foot to be able to have a monetization way to build to that next future. Because, let's be real, without a really strong monetization strategy, it's hard to get off the ground. Hopefully with gaming will be the catalyst to bring that change.
Yes, as you said, so far games companies haven't had too much trouble monetizing it, right? And I think there is still a lot to be learned in terms of monetizing games content. And I think we're getting there slowly. I think network operators in particular, they are very adamant to make this happen, and they're trying many different monetization models, and some are working, some are not. So there's going to be lots of lessons along the way in the coming years. But like you, I remain very optimistic.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, George, for joining us today.
Pleasure.
And thank you so much for joining us at the Ookla booth.